Yeah, bring the pitch down just slightly while I'm getting this all set up.
Welcome back to another episode of the 323. I'm not your host. I'm not Reed Murphy.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 323, and I am your host, Scott Ellia, not Reed Murphy. Joined today by the Curry Puff himself, the Stay Curry Puff Marshmallow Man, Zuhair Ali. How you doing, Zoo?
I hate how well that was.
Oh, Zoo, there's more coaching noise going on right now in the NFL. Pete Carroll is officially out as the head coach in Seattle and becoming an advisor after 15 years. And of course, in normal NFL fashion, this is all being overshadowed by another two recent retirees in both the NFL and in the NCAA college football world. But before we move on to those two, do you feel this is a good move for Pete? Or do you think it's just one way he's going to ease into just retirement?
I think it is because he took a shot in the dark and seeing if the Geno Drew Lock experiment was really going to be the answer to move forward. And while they had a really great season last year and they were pretty competitive this year, it just wasn't what they were looking for. And I don't think he wants to do another rebuild in that short amount of time. I mean, he does have a family. He is getting up there in age and stuff. And it's just, that's a very dynamic division. It's very difficult to play with. It's very difficult to scheme around. So it makes sense that he's just kind of like, man, I don't want to do a quarterback hunt again. I don't want to do this rebuild again. I'm just going to advise and watch from the booth and, chew my gum up there in peace and still be part of the organization, still be part of this fan base, but not necessarily be responsible for the direction of the team.
Right. And I mean, from the outside looking in, I know very little about the Seattle Seahawks fan base in the locker room there, but it seems like he's like a player's coach, like the quintessential player's coach. Like all the players love him. I think keeping him in that kind of advisory role would be really a smart move. And, it's still a commending resume that he's built out there in Seattle. He's been there for like 14 years. I think this was his 14th season. He's only been sub 500 3 times. 2 of which being his first 2 seasons there in Seattle, and then following up with a Super Bowl victory in 2013, and then going back to the Super Bowl the next year in 2014, but eventually losing to the New England Patriots. And speaking about the New England Patriots, we got Bill Belichick parting ways after 24 seasons, 6 Super Bowls, 9 Super Bowl appearances. Which to you is the most shocking and game-changing? Which one do you think will be the hardest to replace and face the biggest shadow? Would it be like Bill Belichick? Or would be Pete Carroll there in Seattle?
I think Pete Carroll's going to be harder to replace. And I think that was more shocking as well, because with the way that the Patriots season has been going the last couple of years, like people have been kind of calling it and anticipating it. But I think everybody was just impressed with how well Seattle was doing with Geno Smith and still making good draft picks and still having a competent defense. So I think Pete Carroll was definitely the most shocking one. Bill Belichick, there's just been so much talk about it. Like when it finally happened, it was just like, okay, I saw that coming. It was good that they like mutually parted ways and had a press conference and were all nice to each other. And Kraft really wanted to kiss Bill, but he had a cold. So like, I don't know if you saw that interview, but it was just kind of like, this is such a cringe.
I saw bits and pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a team that's just like in dire need of a rebuild. Cam Newton didn't work out. Mac Jones didn't work out. Bailey Zappi didn't work out. Like their defense is great. He's a defensive minded coach, but the ball was just not rolling. And same issue. AFC East just has so many powerhouses. Like the Jets definitely just are. I really feel like they are a quarterback and an offensive line away. In terms of just the way that they operate and move and stuff, it was just a setback, but the Patriots just fell off way too far and they need fresh blood.
Right. I'm right there with you. I think the New England job is going to be more of a rebuild than in Seattle at this point. And, after 24 right. I mean, and you could, whoever ends up taking that job, whether it's Jared Mayo takes over or Mike Vrabel just got canned in Tennessee, maybe he goes and returns back to New England and Robert Kraft gets another Patriot blue blood in there to kind of take over because, he's not a bad coach. I think he just got a really shit end deal there in Tennessee after, trading away nearly every damn asset and having his hands tied as far as, the Malik Willis draft and Will Levis getting drafted, and then Derrick
Ryan
Henry's on his
Tannehill
way
still
out the
being
door.
taller.
Right. It's just like he can only do so much, but I feel like Robert Kraft would give him a little bit more leeway. And you're right. I think the writing was on the door, especially after that last Super Bowl victory in 2018. They followed it up with a really impressive 12-4 record after that. But after that season, 2020, 7-9, and then from then on out, 10-7, 8-9, and 4-13. At this point, it's probably the smartest thing to do because there's no way that you could tarnish a reputation of a Bill Belichick, 6-time Super Bowl winning head coach. But it definitely comes to a point like, okay, let's stop the bleeding now. Maybe he goes into a new job. Maybe he goes to Washington. I know a lot of people are trying to point to that direction. I highly doubt that because if I'm Bill Belichick and I'm trying to coach another season, especially being that defensive-minded coach, I need to have an established defense. I need to have a little bit more pieces to the puzzle because I'm going to want to make a Super Bowl push. Is there any team that you could see him going to?
I think the Chargers might be kind of the most likely for him. Just in terms of, I think he wants to go back to California. They already have a lot of weapons in place. It's just a matter of like utilizing it properly. The same could kind of go for Atlanta. They had a decent defense last year, and we already talked about how stacked they are on like first round pick weapons, and they are kind of a quarterback away from at least being competitive. There's not too much going on in the South right now either, so I think those would kind of be the two best bets from him. And with Mike Vrabel leaving Tennessee, I was listening to Commanders Declassified, and they were talking about how Jim Harbaugh would actually be a good pick for Tennessee.
Ooh.
With the pick of 3 quarterbacks and just kind of needing offensive weapons to start pushing the.
Well, and it's funny that you bring up Tennessee because I fell down a rabbit hole after Belichick announced that you were having the mutual parting of the ways, and someone went through this whole conspiracy theory about how Tom Brady almost came out of retirement and he was getting enticed to join Mike Vrabel there in Tennessee, and it ended up not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a chance in the world where Bill Belichick takes over in Tennessee and entices Tom Brady to come back for one more season? They just reunite there in Nashville for one more season?
I don't know, because I feel like a big part of Belichick leaving Patriots is the longer that he's there and having bad seasons, the longer he has a tarnished legacy of the only reason he was good was because of Brady. Like, that's forever going to haunt him. And I feel like if he goes through another rebuild and he has, 2 or 3 more bad seasons, then that's just going to keep coming up. What was he without Brady? What was he without Brady? What was he without Brady? So I think he's trying to get away from that so that he can actually like retire on a good note with a reputation of himself and not one with just him tied to Brady.
Right. And there's one team that I feel that could be a surprise pickup if everything goes to plan how I feel like it's going to go to plan, and that's the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh. I thought you were the Raiders.
No. If the Raiders do not sign Antonio Pierce, they are the dumbest organization in. I've already felt that way about them, anyways. But they need to re-sign him. And
was
just
it
give
the Titans that requested an interview with them today? With Pierce?
I believe so. But yeah, no, I could see a world now that Jerry Jones, the Sith Lord himself, knows that Bill Belichick is out there. And if Mike McCarthy were to drop the game in the McCarthy Bowl against the Packers this coming weekend, will give him enough justification to get rid of Mike McCarthy and try to sign Bill Belichick. Because could you imagine Bill Belichick down there in Dallas with the offense that's already established, the stellar defense that's there, and try to get one more Super Bowl push before he finally hangs it up 100%?
That would be interesting. And here's the big question that comes to my mind when you say that. The rumor mill right now is that if McCarthy has a bad postseason, he gets fired and Dan Quinn potentially gets elevated. And there's a lot of interview requests for Dan Quinn. Does he stay if Belichick gets signed on?
If I'm Dan Quinn, I stay on, because are you going to pass up a chance to learn under probably the greatest head coach of any sport across the country?
But he's a very controlling defensive-minded coach too. So what if, Dan Quinn's obviously doing something right in Dallas in terms of their defense. Right. So what if he starts, intervening and that actually takes a drop in the way the defense plays?
Well, I think Dan Quinn, with him being such a defensive-minded coach and all the positions that are open up right now, need a coach like that, especially in Washington and then even in Seattle. I could see Dan Quinn going back to Seattle at this point.
That could be interesting.
I actually would really like that. And to stay on the same topic of, potential hires and landing spots and things like that. I know you're not as well versed in college football, but the greatest college football coach to ever be in the game, Nick Saban, recently retired from Alabama after 17 seasons and 6 national championships. Now, Reed asked me specifically, did I think the NIL era and challenge of adapting caused this? And I really do. I think you're seeing a lot of this, not only in the NCAA, but even in the NFL, where a lot of these, I hate to say a slur, but boomer coaches are starting to get their way out and getting forced out because the old guard's changing, the new young guns are coming in and they're adapting a lot faster. And I think now that he retired, the conspiracy theorist in me is starting to believe that the college football playoff committee already knew that he was going to be retiring and gave him that last shot and got him into the college football playoff simply because he was not going to be returning after the season. There's been a lot of names kind of tied to it. I know Lane Kiffin, who was once an assistant head coach underneath Nick Saban. I know he's tied to it. Dan Lanning, the head coach in Oregon, he's already came out stating that he is not leaving Oregon. Steve Sarkisian, the head coach from Texas. Texas is joining the SEC next year, but there's a lot more money to throw around in Texas. I don't see him going. This is something that I feel is going to be, they probably already know who it is and they have it kind of in place. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen in the next 48 hours. I know you probably couldn't care less because it's college football, but maybe next season.
Ever since you started your show, I've been paying attention to it like more and more every week. So this is definitely intriguing information. And it makes me want to ask you another question. With all the vacancies in the NFL right now, do you see any of these fired head coaches wanting to go back to college or to college?
Ooh.
Look at
I'd
me
like to see.
thinking.
I'd like to see Vrabel go do college coach somewhere. He is a really high energy, intense coach. I think him going to college would be a pretty interesting move.
I think we jokingly talked about Rivera in the group chat too.
Oh God, Rivera would
what team
be in
needs
shambles
right now.
He would be in absolute shambles. Well, and what's even more crazy is that, you have the Alabama position that's currently open, which is definitely the number one open coaching spot in college football. But you potentially could have Michigan on there too, with Jim Harbaugh looking to make the jump to the NFL, which all signs are pointing that he is going to be jumping to the NFL. It's just where that landing spot's going to be at this point. If you had to bet right now, Harbaugh's coming out to the NFL, where do you think he's going to land?
I like the Tennessee pick. Man, it all comes down to Tennessee, Atlanta, and Chargers. Like, I can't move. I feel like those are the three main picks to go towards. And then, like, everything else is kind of like they're going to be picking up the scraps.
Right. Well, where's Atlanta picking right now? Where are they slated?
Didn't you say 9?
They are, Atlanta's 8.
Okay. Patriots were like 3 or 4. So they're
Patriots 3. Yeah, so before Atlanta, you have Tennessee at 7, who could draft a quarterback. The Giants could draft a quarterback. Chargers aren't moving on. Arizona, maybe. I mean, they saw a lot of they were definitely relying a lot more on Kyler towards the end of the season. I think Kyler actually
to him right now.
Yeah, I think he's actually getting along with the new head coach out there, which I think most people are surprised about. So I don't see them going after quarterback this year. New England, they're probably going to go after quarterback. Washington, I hope they don't. I think they should
I think I'm just going with the flow at this point.
I like Sam Howell. That's the thing. It's
I
really like him. I think giving him another year, build the O-line, try to give him another chance with the next head coach to come in, because like we talk about week in and week out, it seems like every year there's a new generational quarterback that comes out, and having the number 2 overall pick, the upside to hitting on a quarterback at number 2 is drastically slimmer than hitting on some positional or some key player that you actually need.
Yeah, because if you go, like, say the Bears do take Caleb Williams, who hasn't even like announced that he's coming into the NFL draft yet, which is very interesting. And say we do take Drake May, like, you just have a taller Sam Howell who still needs experience at that point, because Sam Howell's on year 3 at this point. So it's one of those things where it's like you're still gonna have to do that soft reset. I don't keep up enough to have like the confidence to be like, oh yeah, Drake May does this and he's that. But Williams, May, and Daniels could all potentially go in the first 4 picks.
Right. Well, and then especially with you all in Washington, you have the number 2, and then you have 2 picks in the second round at 35 and 40, which
And
are
then
still
3 in the
really
third, so everything's in the top 100.
right. So it's like you don't need to reach on a quarterback that early. You could easily wait until the second or third round and get one of these quarterbacks are going to kind of fall. Maybe Michael Penix Jr. falls down there a little bit, or
Yeah.
I don't think Bo Nix is going to get out the first round. I have him going to Atlanta at this point, but there's still plenty of quarterback depth to reach in the third round. Just roll the dice and see what happens.
Yeah, we have a lot of holes that need to be filled up.
Right. Now it's like, now with Bill Belichick no longer in New England, the updated list of the NFL's longest tenured head coaches now, you got Mike Tomlin there at 17 years, John Harbaugh's at 16 years, Andy Reid is still in there, and you got Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, and Sean McDermott at 7 years. Who do you see Andy Reid being that next head coach that could go down? Or who do you think would leave? Because there's been actually some grumblings that Mike Tomlin might not even come back. He might take a little hiatus like Sean Payton did.
Wait, what do you mean? Could
like Andy Reid talk about like Andy Reid retiring, or Mike Tomlin actually the rumors being true that he's going to take a little bit of a mental vacation for a little bit from NFL?
I don't see Reid retiring anytime soon. I just feel like they have something good going on over there, because like the fact that they have no wide receivers and they're still competitive, I think he's still really involved. Honestly, like I hate to say it, but like I'm just surprised he hasn't had any health concerns at this point.
Yeah,
like they kind of go hard with it on the commercials too. So I'm just like, I mean, good for him. Like I don't want him to, but at the same time, like just kind of like wonders like how healthy is he right now? Is he and with how like high strung he is too, and the way that he goes off on the refs,
right.
it's just it really makes you wonder. I
Well,
hate
and
saying
especially
it. That's
because
such a negative thing to think about, but it's just
well, and you wouldn't think of this with them both standing next to each other, but Andy Reid's 6 years younger than Bill Belichick. He's only 65. You just wouldn't, like you said. I think I'm more surprised he hasn't had any health concerns. But yeah, I'm interested to see what's going to happen. John Harbaugh, I don't think is going to go anywhere anytime soon. He's still, in my mind, still very young. He's established there in Baltimore. He ain't going nowhere. And then Sean McVay is probably going to leave on his own accord.
Leaving.
He is such an LA prima donna. He has been talking about this for years. He got his ring there in LA with Matt Stafford. And then ever since then, there's reports that he might want to step away and go to the booth.
The best part is the fact that he talked Donald into not retiring after the Super Bowl, and then was just like, "Yeah, I might take a year off.
It's like, take a pick. Take a pick. Kyle Shanahan, he's gonna be like his dad. He ain't going anywhere anytime soon.
McDermott might have like a mutual parting ways at some point.
Yeah, I think with how the window is slowly closing, and at this point in Buffalo, there could be a mutual parting the ways. But especially with a coach who's under 50 years old, I still feel that he'd be able to find another job fairly quickly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh,
it's just one of those things where it's like, if they didn't make the Super Bowl the last couple of years, it's a little tough now. But with Diggs being the diva that he is, with all the big contracts that they have, with Josh Allen like throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, like good for them for like being able to win. But you went from like top contender to a wild card pick within a year,
right? And see, and that's in that maybe you can explain it. Why the hell does Stephon Diggs keep bitching about this? Is it because they haven't been able to actually figure it out? Because if I'm Stephon Diggs, I'm playing with a top 3 NFL quarterback. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to let the team figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not like he's not getting paid.
It's the same with Jamar Chase too. It's like, I'm almost fucking open. It's like, okay, but like something systematically is going wrong that the ball's not getting to you.
Right.
It's the same with Terry McLaurin, right? Like we finally got the quarterback, we finally got the offensive coordinator, and we were supposed to be more moving, and we're throwing the ball more, but you had to like force him the ball for the last 2 minutes of the last game to get him his 1,000 yards. Like, how did he get worse with the system that he's been needing? He's just not a little bitch about it.
Well, there's that.